So this is the first season that we've probably seen a completely new set of fullbacks. One that we signed last season, but unfortunately missed the whole campaign due to a really bad ACL injury, and another who came in for £40 million. With Arsenal fans wondering, why are we adding to another position that's completely stacked? But early on, we're kind of seeing the impact of Calafiori and Timber, who both had great games again against PSG. As this is a tactical themed episode, it's only right I brought the fantastic Graham and Harvey Gratian for the first time on this channel as well. Actually, for both of you. But a round of applause, guys. You're doing fantastic work in the Arsenal space. Harvey, welcome, mate. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. I know we were just chatting off air then and how I always watch the Goonerverse pod, so it's a real pleasure for me to be here and I can't wait to get chatting with you all.
That's really kind, man. And Graham, we have shared many a screen together. How are you, man?
I'm really good, mate. Yeah, thanks for the invite. Looking forward to it tonight. And seen one or two of Harry's videos. Very good quality. He knows his stuff, Harry. So I'm pleased you got him on tonight. And I did see that video he did over the weekend, actually, on the two defenders that we're going to talk about tonight. And I thought it was really top video. So
thank you.
Credits to Harry on that one.
It's fantastic content. And of course, you're all subscribed to Sharoy's Voice, who's putting out the One Mic podcast every single week. Sharoy, how are you finding, man? How are you finding YouTuber life?
Today was the first time that I made it onto No Context Fan TV's X account. So I just sat there and thought, right, that means that you've made it, mate. Well done. I can just stop now. I can just stop. But look, in terms of this episode, when I saw the lineup, I immediately just thought, I'm probably going to ask a few more questions because you guys are definitely the tacticos when it comes to this panel. So I'm going to try and provoke some thought, but I'm not even going to try and step to the godfather of tactics that is Graham and the wonderfully young disciples. So let's see how this one goes.
Fantastic. And for anyone who doesn't know, that No Context Fan TV account, basically they're on Twitter and they just clip up or get screenshots or whatever it is of Fan TV on YouTube, which is brilliant, and collect the best and funniest moments. The one and only time I made it was when I was celebrating that draw against Man City. So I got somewhat ridiculed. But a season on, only 5-6 months on, it's City fans celebrating draws. So let me not say too much, but into the meat of the pod, let's do it. I really want to take this angle on Timber and Calafiori. I was even contemplating making a video about it, but it's been covered brilliantly by Harvey. And I know, Graham, you had real thoughts about it. Graham, our discussion kind of happened post-Leicester. We've now had another game, which has been this PSG game. Has it sort of cemented your thoughts about the impact these two fullbacks are having? And what is that impact that you're seeing on the team?
What I've seen, actually, is Arteta's taken the team to another level with this sort of combination he's now got with these two fullbacks. We are incredibly fortunate, actually, James, that we've got now three talented fullbacks. I include Ben White in that can play in all phases of the pitch, who can invert, can basically play out wide and can underlap and support the attack. And what I love about this change, what I've seen over the last two games, I noticed it on Saturday in the stadium, I just love the way Calafiori roams when he goes forward. He's sort of like given license to get forward. And he's added a dimension to that left-hand side that is bringing the best out in Gabriel Martinelli. So I think the best thing about this, of course, is that Ben White had the groin strain and he doesn't want to rush him back. He wants to nurse him through that injury. Timber did start left back at the start of the season with White on the right-hand side. But I love Timber on the right-hand side. I just love his performance on Saturday. He created 7 big chances, or 7 chances from that position, and he's sort of like he's underlapping and overlapping. We've missed that right-hand triangle this year of White, Odegaard and Saka with Odegaard out, and Havertz has obviously been drifting over to the right. But what I've seen is, I think these two fullbacks, and I don't mean to disrespect Ben White here, I think have taken our play to a new level. And I think this is pretty much, we always talk, me and you, about the next evolution of where Arteta wants to go. And I see us improved with these two players in this position. I think Calafiori being left-footed helps that side, helps that dynamic. I love the way him and Declan Rice sort of interact. You know, Rice pulls out to the left when he comes inside. I love the way he goes outside and allows Martinelli to come inside. I love the sort of like how Trossard joins the group. And I thought Trossard's movement last night was key for the 2 goals, the way he got between the gaps in their block to sort of like create chaos and to move people around to create the sort of situations for the goals. But what I've seen is I just think I just think our play looks better at the moment with these two fullbacks. And I'm not saying that we weren't good with Ben White on the right hand side, but I just love the combination. I love Calafiori actually. When I'm sitting in that stadium, I imagine I'm watching Paolo Maldini the way he's playing at the moment. I just think he's an incredible footballer, and Timber is a phenomenal footballer as well. I just think they've elevated our play on both those sides, and I think they are sort of adding something to the patterns and the rotations that he wants to build when we're on the ball. And also, they can all defend. That's the best thing about it. Timber, that great tackle last night. They're all proper defenders. They're proper defenders along with Gabriel Saliba. It's a great defensive line we got now, and I think they've just added something extra. I just marvelled watching in the stadium last week. I think Harvey should come in here, should come in here because he actually covered it brilliantly on his video.
Go for it, Harv.
Yeah, I mean, you've absolutely smashed it, Graham, there with what you're saying. I think it's totally right to think of the dynamic with Calafiori and Timber as fullbacks, as sort of the catalyst for this fresher, sort of revitalised Arsenal that we're seeing. One, as Graham said, full of flexibility in the build-up, rotations, unpredictability across the thirds, and a real balance, I think, is starting to take shape on the pitch. As Graham said, you sort of have, in this pair, you essentially have two players able to obviously play a traditional fullback role, but invert into midfield, occupy those higher pockets inside of both our wingers, and also push those same wingers inside and hold the width. And I think post-Leicester game, the key quotes from Arteta's takeaways from the game, he said, what Timber and Calafiori allow us to do is an unpredictability. And essentially what he's meaning is the unpredictability they have between zones now that comes with the completeness of their profiles. But I think beyond everything, if we're just looking strictly at the qualities of the players, instead of the spaces that they occupy on the pitch, you have ambitious on the ball, but who as well, in terms of build-up profiles, are really complete. And I think the key relationship that Graham sort of alluded to was Calafiori and Declan Rice. The ability to, at the start of the season, we saw Rice really constrained to that higher left pocket at times, offset higher where Odegaard was the one that was allowed to swing lower into our build-up. Whereas now against Leicester and against PSG, certainly in settled play, more often than not, it was Calafiori that was the one bursting high through the half spaces. And at times we'd see him sort of gallivanting across to the right-hand side, or even being the highest player sort of stampeding through the middle. And I think, as Graham said, he loves to roam, as does Timber. And I think at this stage of Calafiori's development, it's important to keep him focused on this, on sort of moving and creating space and holes for others, on associating. And this means that Rice can get much lower in that left centre mid role when he rotates deeper and Calafiori takes that higher pocket. And when Rice can be that player to drop and drive his team up the pitch with him. But yeah, like we said, Calafiori can go everywhere. He can overlap Martinelli. And I think, that strong-footed overlap and natural left-footed presence is something that may seem simple to everyone, but it makes the left-hand side tick with so much tempo and a rhythm, and it almost guarantees progression from A to B on that side, and gives us that additional threat on the outside and all that fluidity that we're starting to see. But I didn't actually get a chance to watch the PSG game live, and then I watched the first half today, and I was, again, just really excited, I think, by the potential new aspects and dimensions to Arsenal we're seeing on the pitch. You can talk about rotations and movements, but I think the key is that the timing of these movements and the relationships that are cohering on the pitch, the timing of these movements are perfect, and each player is being positioned now in zones and with surrounding dynamics that are optimal for them. I think that is the absolute key. I mean, I've got I'll leave the floor for you guys now, but I've got lots to say about watching back that PSG game and just sort of doubling down on how we always start, it seems now, without Ødegaard, we've started in this 4-2-4 foundation. And then against PSG, as confidence sort of starts to grow, we sort of, all the improvisations we've seen in our structure sort of bed in from that 4-2-4 and come from that.
Well, I found that interesting, Harvey, because when the 4-2-4 was something that we started to see last season, which almost felt like Arteta's antidote to the bigger games. Like, he wants fluidity, but he recognizes that if we are to lose the ball, I want to be in the shape that I'm going to defend in quicker.
Absolutely.
You know, because Zinni losing the ball when he's sort of somewhere roaming in midfield and then having to charge back. I mean, the invert works when we do what Jamie Carragher analysed brilliantly on Monday Night Football, which was an inverted left-back press, right? And we talked about that, Graham, haven't we? Where sometimes Zinchenko, he doesn't just invert on the ball, he inverts off it as well. So there's moments like that where Arteta wants to tweak the shape. Off the ball, he's wanted... Last season was Arteta evolving from 22-23 and going, I just want us to be a little bit more settled. We might not be as exciting, and every time we win the ball, we look like we can score with every attack. But at least we've got a settled play and we've got a little bit more control of things. What I found interesting about this game was you can see that Timber and Calafiori are wide to build up at times. But when I say that there were moments, even against Leicester, where Declan Rice is meant to be our left 8, and he's in between Saliba and Gabriel. And Partey's gone off to the right because Timber's charged up the pitch, because Saka has moved inside. Or sometimes Partey's dropped in between the centre-backs, and Calafiori and Timber have double inverted without a 6. So we've made it a 3-2, but with our fullbacks. And I sort of wonder, is Arteta on a training field somewhere? I'd love to know your thoughts on this, Roy. Is Arteta on a training field somewhere shouting, right, 3-2, 2-3, 4-2, you know, to get them constantly moving? Right, the ball's here, you do this. Is he trying to work on this? Or is this player intelligence? Is this the player's understanding? Thomas Partey's just gone over there. I've got to occupy this space because that space is taken by Bukayo Saka. I'm not helping. I'm not offering a lane or a triangle being where I am. So Jurriën Timber knows to... Like, what is it? Is it player intelligence, or is this just elite coaching, or is it a bit of both, which it probably is? What do you think?
I feel like it may well be a bit of both, because for it to become routine and for you to have that muscle memory and for you to understand where you have to be, I think there probably is a drill where he's just rattling off combinations like an NFL playbook, right? I think I was speaking to you about this, James. He's in, Arteta's in WhatsApp groups with NFL managers and NBA managers, and
Sean McVay, the LA Rams coach, he talks to him regularly.
There you go. So he takes things from other sports, right? And I think, for example, when you're talking about Thomas Partey drifting into the right back position, or Thomas Partey dropping into the centre back position, or Declan Rice having to accommodate, that is super, super important when we're talking about Calafiori and Timber's attacking prowess, right? Because one thing that everyone did notice yesterday was, even with a head start, someone like Hakimi absolutely skinned Calafiori. So it's not as though his recovery pace is incredible when you're up against that level of winger. And one thing that I think Graham said, and a lot of people have said, including me, is that there is something ever so slightly more potent about Martinelli now that Calafiori is involved. And he might be a key in terms of unlocking Martinelli, but that means you're talking about attacking influence. If you're looking at attacking influence down that side, and a player that has all that prowess, but not necessarily the recovery pace, exactly what you're saying, James, that the need for those around him to be able to understand that, because you're not always going to hear Arteta on the sideline, and to be able to accommodate that. And that has to happen, sometimes on 30, 35 occasions a game, if not more. Right. So you have to have that level of muscle memory and that intelligence. And that you can sort of look at what Mikel Merino said about Arsenal last night. He said, look, I've only had a couple of training sessions with this lot, but this is nuts. Like, I didn't even know people went into this level of detail. And that may well have been this positional awareness stuff, right? Well, this is how we defend as an 11, and maybe even a 12 if you're talking about Jorginho conducting on the sidelines. But it's unsurprising that we look so sort of formidable in defense, but also formidable in attack, because I don't think you can do that with the old school sort of, well, this is my position, I'm only going to operate on this flank, and if I get caught out, I get caught out. The game has moved on.
Yeah, Declan Rice said a similar thing in an interview with Rio Ferdinand, when he was talking about it going up levels. I don't think West Ham fans particularly liked that, but I mean, the point was that what Arteta's trying to do is so technical, and there's such an overload of information. You cannot build a team that easily that can play the kind of football we can play, but can, with 10 men, grind out even a point, but nearly all 3 against Man City for a whole half. I mean, like, he's got Arsenal. We're good pressing high. We're good in the mid block. We're good as a deep block. We're good in possession. We're good in settled possession, where we're just keeping things ticking, keeping things moving. There was a moment where PSG had a bit of a flurry of attacks, and they were just a little bit on the front foot. And actually, Partey went off, so I thought we might be parking the bus our way through this. But Saliba, Rice, Marino, they just got on the ball and they just started knocking it between them. And suddenly we just made our way back up the pitch. We weren't creating loads of chances. We settled the tempo of the game. And again, like, to be able to do all these facets of the game so easily, if Calafiori just go to right back like it's nothing, that's not easy. But I thought that was interesting. Graham, I want your thoughts on Arteta's quotes about having players on their stronger foot in the position in defence they're in. So Timber being right-footed, Calafiori being left-footed. What's the benefit? Why does Arteta think that's so important?
Well, I think that if you've got players on their stronger foot on each side, it's going to benefit the combinations you have on that side. I think since Martinelli probably the left hand side this season's got. We noticed the other week, didn't we? We were talking about every player on that left hand side was right-footed, and so basically, if you've got sort of like players on their stronger foot, they can go outside. Well, we didn't have that the other week. Everyone was coming inside, so I think you do need sort of like players, I think, on each side on a stronger foot, which I think adds to the combinations and the movement and the rotations he wants to make. So I think what he wants to do with this team really is he wants to dominate all phases of play. So he wants good technical players, players I think who can sort of like play in each part of the pitch, comfortable in each part of the pitch, which is what he's building. But he also respects the other side of the game, as you said, James, the out of possession side of the game. You know, so he wants us. We're brilliant at both sides of the game, which wasn't always so with an Arsenal team in the past. But I just think having the benefit of having a player on the right hand side who's right-footed is obviously. I just think it improves that side. You're on the right side of the pitch. You've got Saka who can come inside on his left foot on that side, but I just think it adds quality on that side. If you know to how you want to build up your play. So I think what he probably meant was I just think it helps the balance of the team to have left-footed player on the left side and a right-footed player on the right side. Although obviously, as you said, he did move Calafiori over onto the right-hand side almost seamlessly. But that's what I think on it. I don't know.
Well, the reason that surprised me, that change, was because you had Thomas Partey right there, Jorginho Marino on the bench. He could have moved Partey to right back if Timber had to come off. I mean, it wasn't a change that we loved, you know, when he did it at the start of the 23-24 season, but it's a position he's been more than happy to play Partey in. So I'm surprised he didn't just invert Partey from right back and keep things moving. He actually wanted, and you know, was that to make a point or was that to keep his best defenders on the pitch? I mean, Barcola, a right-footed, exciting winger. Maybe that was a good matchup for Calafiori. We ultimately defended the game well from that point. But that was interesting. I mean, Arteta's been really interesting with his use of subs, Harvey, and I think that's part of his, you know, there's adding good players, which makes you a better team. But the management side of the game, I feel, look, who am I to tell Arteta he's improving, right? I mean, you know, there's so much that I obviously don't know about the game that he's already forgotten, but I just feel that I feel happier about the changes he's making, the subs he's making, the use of the youngsters, the management of people's minutes. He's getting that right as well this season, and that's not to be overlooked because it's something we've been critical of before.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes in tandem with, I mean, this has been covered a lot, but a squad that he feels like he can trust. Yeah. And you're not just at a point now where you're talking about depth for the sake of numbers. There's sort of a usability to that depth. And I think we've seen that even with, like we sort of touched on earlier, where the players are being used in zones that they can really naturally dominate, and the same that happens with the dynamics around them. I think let's take a figure that many would say is peripheral to the squad in Jakub Kiwior. I think the way he was used in pre-season as playing central centre-back, deputy in possession without Saliba, before Calafiori had joined up with the squad and taking that load off, Gabriel has been really good. He's, I think, shown there's a pathway even for these peripheral figures 4 minutes in the squad, there's a level of trust, like you said, with Mars Lewis Skelly and Ethan Wanyeri. There's a readiness to play now. It isn't just a bedding in. There's a genuine feeling that they impact when they play. And yeah, I think there's Arteta just coming more into odds with the squad that he has created. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see. We're talking a lot about evolutions and how he sees this Arsenal side going down the line. It's how it's going, this fluidity that we're seeing. How is that going to translate when Martin Odegaard returns? Because it absolutely can be. It can be a relatively seamless transition, but as we've seen before, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing. There's not one size fits all, and I think Arteta's Arsenal shows us that to a T. But as we've seen before, when Zinchenko's been out of the side and then has come back in, our build-up suddenly becomes a bit more rigid. Everything becomes a bit more fixed by virtue of him having to stay in the pivot a bit more. But with Odegaard, we also saw last season him being given a big license. But how does that interact with everyone else? Because Trossard is obviously, I would say, has been, he's not an Odegaard replacement at all, but his role with Havertz, for example, in that sort of shadow strikery false nine duo pairing is that Trossard takes the biggest burden of that between the lines connecting presence that Odegaard obviously helps us give. Trossard nowhere near to the same levels of quality and of guile at times, but he gives us that linking, that connecting presence. And Havertz then, more often than not, is that stretcher. And it's how those two move off each other. How does Odegaard then phase into that dynamic again? There's, of course, the question of Mikel Merino. And I think one of his best qualities is being a foil, if that makes sense, to others. And if we are to be a side full of unpredictability in our movements and sort of these fluid rotations, he's someone who can absolutely do that. But then do we at times want to go a bit more sort of Bash Brothersy and just have him as that high left centre mid, box crasher, dual heavy that we've seen at the start of this season Declan Rice perform? So there are lots of questions how this version of Arsenal looks like it's ticking with so much sort of verve right now, but there are still, I think it's ultimately a very exciting thing that there are still so many questions with an Arsenal that many would say certainly a couple of weeks ago wasn't even anywhere close to a preferred 11.
Yeah. Shiroi, I feel
James, before you go to Shiroi, I feel on the Odegaard situation that Harvey was touching on then, I think what he's done, this is just my opinion, we needed two things to happen, I think, and he's managed to achieve it in the way he set the team up. I think Havertz had to play, he had to step up to actually lead in the area of the pitch that he was going to be moved into, which was on the right-hand side. So he's doing a lot of what Harvey said, but he's also sort of like working in that right-hand side with Bukayo Saka. So he's really stepped up in that area for the team and also scoring goals. But I thought last year that Odegaard was sort of like, he redefined the role of him, didn't he? He was playing all across the pitch. We touched on that. He was sort of like playing up from the back. He was in the box midfield. He was getting up high on the right. He was doing a lot of things last year, Martin Odegaard. So I think he's asked Declan Rice this season he's redefined Declan Rice almost, the way he's taking control in the build-up now when he brings the ball out, in much the same way as I thought Odegaard did last season. And he's the one who's sort of like switching the play a lot. I noticed on Saturday, he was the one pinging it to the right-hand side to Saka quite a lot in that first half. He was bringing the ball out. He would either roam forward or he'd switch to play. So I think the Odegaard, we haven't missed Odegaard, I think, because of those two players, because of the way Declan Rice is, the way he's playing in the team at the moment, and also the way Havertz is leading in at the top of the pitch. So that's what I felt watching it. Certainly I felt that in the stadium on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, Robbie had people outside the ground admitting that we haven't, we hope he's back soon. We haven't missed Odegaard in the sense that actually we've still played to a level and put up some fantastic results. Obviously, always miss a player of his quality, but it's kind of an interesting debate and question there. Sharoy,
Arteta has missed him. Arteta has missed him. There was this really candid press conference. I can't remember exactly when it was. I think it was last week, where Arteta just point blank says, well, look, when it came to figuring out our attack, the vast majority of our thinking was, how do we get Martin Odegaard into the positions where he can influence the game the most? And that makes that, I know that makes Arsenal sound relatively one-dimensional, but that's Arteta saying that I actually build my team in an attacking sense, at the very least, around this guy, right? And I think when it comes to squad assembly, Arteta, since his style of play has been criticised, he's been very vocal about the fact that, look, it's not that I necessarily want to sometimes have to just shut up shop, but there are certain opponents and certain teams that will take us there, and we have to be equipped to go there. But what he always ends with is, but that isn't the game that I want to play. And I've seen so many iterations, and Harvey, you were alluding to it, and all of the sort of different evolutions of Arsenal, all of which I like in some way, shape, or form, right? And James, that's what I'm going to put this question to you now. What do you think the style that Arteta says he doesn't want to deviate from, and the way that he wants to play? What do you think that is?
I think Arteta's. It's difficult because I was going to say his favourite version of Arsenal, but I want to be careful how I say it, because favourite I don't think is what he believes is the winning formula. Like, right. So I think the best version of Arsenal he'll say is probably this one, and the 2024 version that has built with the fullbacks a bit wider, that has been sort of safety first while still playing good football, scoring lots of goals. But I think he dreams of a team that plays the football of 22-23, devastating, 2-3-0 up after 30, 40 minutes, like games won in the first half, just like box-to-box runners, wingers getting lots of goals, ultimate possession and 1-2s. I think he wants to build that side, because I think he was a coach when Guardiola had his 2017-18 team, the Centurions. And the thing about the Centurions is people kind of look down on the Centurions a little bit. No, they don't look down on them, but when comparing them to like the treble winners, they'll say, well, the treble winners at Man City were defensively sturdier, plus they had Haaland who scored all those goals. Therefore, they're probably the more complete version. But the treble winners and the City sides either side of that haven't got close to A, the football that the Centurions played, and B, the points tally. Centurions, in the name, they got 100 points because they were just... Honestly, I thought they were unbeatable. Till Liverpool did what they did at Anfield, the only other time they lost after that when the title was wrapped up, 2 defeats. I honestly think if there's any team that could go invincible, it was that team. Maybe the Liverpool side under Klopp when they won it, but really it was that Centurion side. I just thought no one's beaten them. I think that's football utopia for Arteta. That's why he's tried to play Smith Rowe in the left 8, but keeps moving away from it because it's not quite happening. That's why I think he doesn't quite give up on Zinchenko and Jesus, because they are players that get us closer to that kind of style of football. So yeah, I think his version of football utopia is that football. But I mean, City did it with Aguero, Sterling, Sane, De Bruyne, David Silva, Fernandinho, Laporte, Stones. Like, they were perfect. They were some of the best players on the planet to do it. And, so did Guardiola's great Barcelona stuff. For me, the greatest team of all time. So I think that's Arteta's goal. He's just realistic about that level of player. You don't get it easily. You don't even unearth it easily. You don't coach it for sure. That's a talent thing. So he's flexible. That's why we defend in a different way that upsets people. Don't know what you guys think. Harvey, you were nodding there. I mean, what do you think is Arteta's version of like the perfect Arsenal for him?
I think it's quite a difficult one to obviously pin down, especially when we're still waiting to get a full squad. But I would say, with going back to the Odegaard debate, I think the fluidity that we're seeing now is something that very easily replaces dependence or responsibility. I spoke a lot about last season on my own channel, and how sort of post Christmas last season we started to see a bit more of these signs of flexibility in the build-up. We saw Odegaard doing his all-phase role, and I called it the pendulum system, and how it was ultimately quite a lopsided one, and how Odegaard in our right interior would move through the phases and have a lot more license than Declan Rice on the opposite side. But I think the fluidity that we're seeing now is something that can rock from side to side. A team that relies on different players, and there's sort of a shared collective responsibility in the wake of sort of the absence that is Martin Odegaard. And I think looking at what an Arteta ideal might be, I think a lot of what we've heard from the players, especially recently in their interviews, Saka's talked about this a lot, has talked about winning in different contexts. And I think there's a danger of sitting on the fence and just saying, okay, Arteta just wants an Arsenal who can improvise on the fly. But I think there's a definite push from Arteta towards having almost a team of on-pitch managers themselves. I think it's a big reason behind the Mikel Merino signing. It's a big reason behind Jorginho coaching as a 12th man on the sideline. It's a push for the Odegaard captaincy, the responsibility we're seeing from Saka stepping up the pitch. Also, Declan Rice, as Graham just said, almost becoming more of a quarterback in the last one or two games. It's a team who may have a set plan going into a match, but hopefully are able to deviate.
That's a great point. And sorry about the coaches. That's a great point. Yeah. He wants people that can think the way he thinks.
Yeah, I think ultimately that's if it's hard to pin down sort of, let's say, structurally, systematically, tactically, whatever, of an Arsenal that Mikel Arteta loves, I think we shouldn't be doing that anyway, because Pep has changed so much. For example, in this season, he's moved a lot away from a strict double pivot, for example, and he's playing, well, it was Rodri, now Kovacic, as sort of a lone item there, and playing Gvardiol and Rico Lewis in really these high pockets in a much more risky setup that gives spaces on the break to opposition. But I don't think it's right to pin Arteta down. And I think if we want to pin him down, it's like I said, a team who are able to improvise on the fly. I think against Atalanta, we almost saw the startings of that happening, but there wasn't the relationships cohered, there wasn't connections on the pitch. But now it feels like those relationships are starting to cohere a bit more, and it's just going to be exciting to the level that goes to when players like Odegaard get back. That'd be my take.
I'm really excited to see it. I think Waneri will play a part in all this as well. Look, we spent, a good half hour there talking tactics around the fullbacks and Arsenal's kind of shape in general, trying to understand what it is Arteta does, because I think 2 years ago, Graham will know that having done Tactical Insight, it was a lot easier to kind of know what Arteta was trying to do, because there'd maybe be one plan we were trying to execute. Now there seems to be 3, 4, 5 in a game. And when he said something about, what was the quote, Sharoy, you always remember it, or the 67 formations in one game.
It was either formations or rotations.
He wants us to be more, I think Harvey's touched on it already, I think he wants us to be more unpredictable. I think the actual side, the football that you said, go back to, I think 2020, did you say 2022?
Yeah, I think 22-23 is his favourite.
I think caught a lot of teams out that season. I think we evolved quicker that season than a lot of teams expected. So we caught a lot of teams off guard the way we played that season. And you talked about wingers running in behind. And you talked about the way we always made fast starts, because I think teams pressed us high a lot at the start. We were able to play through their press, get our wide players in, and we were scoring early goals. So I think the next season, he obviously recognised that teams will be watching us and will be then changing, sitting deeper. That's why we did that show last year about Partey inverting to right back when he decided to go with the extra attacker. He almost had like 6 lanes of attack, didn't he? And he just had 3 at the back, So I think he's always evolving the team. He recognises the team always has to change around the principles that he wants this team to play in. And I think that's what I see. I've talked about sort of like he wants to sort of like us to, we're a possession-based team, but he wants to dominate all phases of play. If we're up against a deep block, he wants players with individual talent, and we've got like attacking rotations to break teams down. And if we're pressed, he wants to be able to play through the opponent and he wants to go direct to win second balls. You know, he can play that way as well. And also now we've added the set piece side of you know, we've got better set pieces. So we've evolved as a team to be very much, we can match teams now in all phases of play, I think. So we've evolved from that team that you talked about, where it was fast starts about playing Martinelli, Saka in behind. But the team's now dropped deeper against us. But he's got a team now that can play against a team in a deep block. And as Harvey's talked about, the fluidity in the zones now, he's got players in the right parts of the pitch. They know where to stand. The distances are smaller. So we've got sort of like players who dominate their zones, you know, and we've got now attacking rotations, fluidity, which I agree with Harvey. We sort of like got that now in our play, that we can dominate opponents. And so that's, I think in answer to your question, I think he rather likes this version of the team, albeit we've still got to develop that squad, haven't we? And we've got players coming back. But I think the way the team's evolving this year, I think it's pretty much how he sees Arsenal.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see more of it. Go on, Shiroi.
Very quick. I mean, just listening to all of this, I think this is what leads to relatively confusing / frustrating recruitment decisions sometimes. Because I think it was you, James, that said he wants people that think how he thinks. And we look at play. I remember when Aubameyang was exiled, but I understand there were behavioural concerns, but there was also a concern about, yeah, he looks like he might be tracking back, but does he love defending in the way that Arteta describes defending? We look at Nicolas Pepe, for example, and letting him go. Now, I think we've retained players for a lot longer with a lot less talent than Nicolas Pepe had. But he's probably just one of those players that ultimately, when we're talking about the level of intelligence and understanding the system and loving to defend and whatever, he just wasn't there. And I think there are a lot of other players that we might look at sort of doing very well on an individual basis at other clubs and think, why the hell aren't we moving for this guy? But Arteta's actually looking at it and saying, well, no, there's a little bit more to it than meets the eye. And obviously the lay people like me are thinking, what the hell's going on here? But he's got that plan, he's got that vision as to what the next version of his team should be. So I think all of that also impacts decisions as to personnel.
Yeah, for sure.
And also he's talked about teams suffering. He's quite happy. You know, he wants players to, you know, to accept they're going to have to suffer in games. Love defending when they. There's always you can't dominate the whole 90 minutes of a football match. There are going to be periods of a game when, James, if you haven't got the ball, and you've got to be, as Shiroi said, you've got to be able to defend. They've got to love defending. And one of his favourite words, I think, is, well, not one of his favourite words, but he uses it a lot, is that we have to suffer at times in games. And so players have to recognise that. It's all about game intelligence as well. I think that's what he's instilled into his team. So
it's why I spent ages arguing with everyone for Forever Arsenal, as you might have seen, Shiroi. You know, when people weren't rating Martinelli, I said, yeah, but he's getting big high fives from Mikel Arteta on the touchline against Atalanta. So he's doing something the manager wants. And ultimately, when we're in the position the team's in, and we've, you know, made the leaps and bounds and strides we've taken over the last few years, Martinelli maybe not putting up the GA, but putting the defensive work isn't something we should just brush off as, well, you should do it anyway, because there's a lot more tactical intelligence to doing that well than just running around and really wanting it and really trying it. And that's why I think it's a part of Arteta's and the Arsenal players that is a little bit underrated. I mean, we're going to move on to Bukayo Saka now. I really want to talk about him because Thierry Henry was praising the work rate of the wingers to Jamie Carragher and Michael Richards, who have both been fullbacks, and he was praising Bukayo Saka. And Bukayo said something really interesting, and I think Bukayo is clever in what he says in the media too. I don't think everything's accidental. He said, thank you, because we're working really hard too. And I don't know whether he was just saying it in like a, yeah, you know, big up for praising us, or whether there was a little bit of like, don't ignore what we're doing, you know, because Saka and Martinelli will know if people are talking about them not being at their best or the output not being there. They're contributing so much defensively. And I feel like he was, again, not making a point. I don't think Bukayo Saka's one to do it, but I think he was just sort of, you know, not letting that observation from Henry just kind of go under the carpet. It was like, yeah, we work really hard. Thank you for mentioning it.
I'd go as far to suggest that he might have been making a point. There were quite a few. Yeah, there were quite a few bits in that interview that made me think, you know what, this guy, he's just grown up and he's willing to just sort of put it on the media, but in a kind of sweet boy way that isn't antagonistic. I mean, when people were asking him about the style of play and the fact that the team wasn't maybe scoring as many goals as they may have sort of expected, he said, well, no, actually, if you look around, we're all scoring, and to me, it's absolutely no surprise that we're all scoring. because of the way that we work. So he's pushing straight back and saying, well, no, actually, you might be trying to run this narrative as to us not being great in attacking sense, but to your point, James, I'm going to put it back and I'm going to say, well, actually, we're doing a hell of a lot of defensive work.
Yeah.
And if you're going to talk about our numbers, I'm going to highlight the fact that Trossard has scored important goals and Martinelli scored last week and Havertz scored in midweek and I've scored today and we are getting the goals. So it's sort of like, you can run the narrative if you want, but I'm going to stand up to it and I'm going to let you know exactly what we're doing. I'm going to confirm that we do it on the training pitch, and you've seen it on the pitch in games.
Yeah, mate, very, very true. Let's talk about Saka in more detail, guys. We'll end the podcast on this. Only because I think it went slightly under the radar amongst those in the Arsenal conversation online that Bukayo Saka's wearing the armband at the moment in the absence of Erdegaard, but then a Jorginho too. And this is someone who, what were we in the 24-25 season? So it was the 19-20 season that he started to get some minutes in the team more regularly. Towards the end of that, obviously, COVID delayed it. We went into July. He got a couple sort of appearances out on the right wing, and he thought maybe this is where Arteta sees his future. He then gets the number 7 shirt, and we go into the 2021 season. That was 4 whole years ago. It doesn't feel like that long ago, but it was 4 whole years ago that Arsenal had another season where it just wasn't clicking. We were in 8th, and he played left wing back. He played number 10. He played right wing. He played left wing. He played everywhere for this team. He played right wing back, I remember as well. And in the end, he settled on the right wing position. We've been looking at his numbers. And I think in looking at his numbers and his output, we've almost missed the growth of the man that is Bukayo Saka. Again, without sounding too cheesy about it, but like, it's the way he handles referees. It's the way he handles being fouled. It's the way he handles the media. It's the way he handles his personal life. It's the way he handles the expectation. It's the way he handles adversity. I missed a penalty for England, but I'm going to take a big one in the shootout. We're 1-0 down and everyone's on my back of the Euros. I'm going to just rifle this into the far corner. People arguing about whether Ian Wright's suggestion of left back or not was right or wrong. And what did he say? He just said, look, I love Ian Wright, but I don't think that's the solution. Showing respect, but standing his ground. I love the picture he put up on Instagram today, I think. Was it him and
Robert Perez?
Perez saying we're friends again. And look, Saka wouldn't have been genuinely bothered, but he might have thought, hold on, don't disrespect me. And again, it's just a little subtle message. I think, like Arteta with his messaging, Saka has grown so much in everything he does. And at the end of it, he's now wearing the armband. And I don't think anyone deserves it more than him. I think we can't let these years with Bukayo Saka just move on as just like we have him, academy product. Well, he's a very special player, and this is a very special story that's happening at Arsenal. And I think we should just take time to really take it in my opinion.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely couldn't agree more. And everything that you're saying there, right? And you say that it was actually some time ago. I just started having heart palpitations, and I wanted to pick up my phone and confirm that what I think is correct as to when his contract ends, because we're now getting to this stage where you're looking at the most mature, the most sort of solid, the best version of him, the absolute leader. The guy deserves to win majors.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't do it here, I could say this about a few players, but we're on the Saka segment. If he doesn't do it here, I know there's loyalty in this game, but these careers are short, man. He will do it elsewhere. That's why I just place so much credence and importance on this next phase of this Arsenal team and getting it over the line. And I think that does lead to the sort of exacerbated nerves at times in certain games.
Sure.
But that's instantly where my mind went.
Yeah. Graham, how much do you love Saka? Oh, sorry. Go on, Harvey.
If that's all right, just for me to butt in. I think we a lot of talking just then about the messaging and Saka, how I think there's a level of clarity really in his post-match interviews. I think a lot of it goes back to the final day of last season, and we talk about Arteta's messaging. He said that after that Everton game, obviously we won, lost out on the title. He said how the players themselves said collectively to each other after that game, they're going to win the title this season. Obviously, whether that is going to happen, we'll see down the line. But something really clicked on the final day of last season for this Arsenal side. I think Saka encapsulates that mindset shift that the players, the squad, truly believe that they are the ones to beat. They're the benchmark. now for this league. And we saw that on the final day as well with Kai Havertz's words. He said, "We will be back better and we'll go one further on the final day." Or we saw that with, again, talk about messaging. Pep literally said, he had that whole interview where he said, "We get the message with Arsenal." So I think Saka has been sort of the plinth of that mindset shift at Arsenal. They're a team of real superstars now, and I think they're going into the game with that same sort of swagger. Like Havertz approaches the game now, whether it's his runs in behind or his aerial challenges up front, like he is going to dominate the opposition centre back. Saka against Nuno Mendes against PSG, there was this subtle arrogance and aggression that I'm going to take you on again and again and again. The first action of the whole game, I think it was João Neves gets pulled out to his side, and there's an easy sort of bump into Timber, who's in a good bit of space in a pocket in the middle. Saka just says no, drives down the outside, carries us the way up the pitch, and wins us a throw in high up. I think this is just, it's a team of believers right now. Whether
I like that
belief, whether it transpires to, something tangible at the end of the year, we'll see. But I think we're in the best place to do that with the mindset and the personalities that we have.
I love that team of believers. Graham, what were you going to come in and say there about Bukayo Saka?
I'd say two things really. I can remember 4 or 5 years ago when we were struggling under Arteta. We were about 8th, and he posted that comment on social media: "Arsenal fans deserve better." And he is the reason, in my opinion, amongst other things, but obviously he is a big reason why we are where we are now. What I love about him, he's got that confidence and arrogance that you talked about, but there's a certain humbleness underneath the way he acts as an individual. He's just a really genuine, modest young man, and he's living the dream. When you think about it, he came through our academy, and I think he inspires so many people. And he's got all that weight on his shoulders, but he carries it effortlessly. And I think he's a tremendous role model. He's a very talented footballer. And I think he deserves to be captain of this team at the moment. And I think he handles himself so well on and off the pitch. I think he's a credit to himself, his family, and the club.
Yeah, listen, I don't know how far the Goonerverse podcast reaches, but if there were ever a segment I'd want a player to see, it'd be that one on Bukayo Saka. And listen, nothing to do with us in the pod. I want him to know how loved he is, man. I think he feels that from the fans, like in game, and I think the away fans too. When we're traveling away, and sometimes in a weird way in football, sometimes the less you're talked about, the better. It sounds weird, but like, if you can just go about your business and no one's got anything it's almost a good thing, in a weird way. But sometimes it's about just stopping and going, hold on. I know it's been 4-5 years of Bukayo Saka, but, in a way still feels quite fresh. But let's not just forget kind of everything he's done. And that if anyone deserves to lift the trophy, like, in a world where, let's hope it's this season and we're lifting one of the big ones, the Champions League or the Premier League. Look, I know they tend to give it to one person to lift it, and it tends to be the captain. But how I'd love Saka to lift it with Ødegaard. Like, that would be... I know rivals are watching it. How you think you're going to win? If we do it, that's how I'd want it done. I don't know if that's...
I would cry. I'd be bawling. Like, I'm not ashamed to... I'm not ashamed to...
Yeah. I think the shame is as well, especially with Saka, is when you look at him as a person, not just on the pitch, because this is the same as well, but he is the best we've got. And if, even as a rival fan, you can't support that. I mean, I really like what Carragher said last night on, the Champions League show. And he was saying how, obviously he's might be to a certain degree removed from what happens and all the sort of the saltiness on social media when it comes to Saka, but how Carragher says if there's one person you can like from a rival team, it is Bukayo Saka. And that's what just gets me sometimes, is that if rival fans can't even resonate with him when he is literally the best we've got, the best role model as a footballer out there for anyone, not just specific to Arsenal. If there's anyone that deserves it, it's him.
Yeah, and also, you keep saying the best we've got, and you're right, because he's also one of our best players, which is what sometimes, because Saliba still feels like not a new shiny toy. We've had him for 2 seasons now, but there's still that kind of I don't know. The conversation around Saliba every time, isn't there? And then there'll be a new player that comes in and what they're doing. We did a whole podcast on Kai Havertz the other day because I felt it was time. And by the way, that's aged quite well, Sharoy. That he's sort of building on those performances. Yeah, Saka is also just a brilliant, brilliant player. And there is always someone else they put in conversations with him. Some Arsenal fans might think it's disrespectful that Chelsea fans want to say that Cole Palmer's better than Bukayo Saka. But just look, he's the barometer. Is that the word? Like, he's the measuring stick. He's the yardstick. Saka, the benchmark. Thank you. It's always Saka. Like, whoever. It was who was that? Who was that awful Man United left back?
Brandon Williams.
It was Brandon Williams.
I forgot about that. That's a joke.
4 years ago. It was Brandon Williams 4 years ago. Who are the other names that have come out since?
Well,
Obviously, Cole Palmer was the most recent.
Foden was there, but I mean, Foden was warranted comparison in terms of numbers, but not in terms of position.
Foden and Palmer, the conversations that, for me, it's Saka, but I'm going to understand that people who watch Foden every week or who watch Palmer every week for their teams and love them, they're going to put them forward. There's certain things Palmer does, there's certain things Saka does. You can have good conversations. I'm picking Saka. But there were other players that's just been put up against him over the years where it's just like, I mean, it's so many. And he's just moved past every single...
Oh, Kulusevski. How could I forget Kulusevski? Remember that
Raheem
one?
Sterling at one point, but now he's with us, so we kind of want Raheem to close that gap again.
Yeah.
There have been loads. There have been loads. Top player, Bukayo.
The thing is with him, James, is also, and we do it a lot, me and you, when we analyse his performance, we think he hasn't quite had the impact today. He hasn't quite been at the level we expect. And then we look at the numbers, don't we? We look at the numbers of the ball recoveries, what he does out of possession, and all the other numbers, chances created that we didn't realise. And he's first in all those numbers, most games. He's an incredible footballer. He's not just what he offers talent-wise, it's what he offers off the ball. And that's, I think, what sets him aside from some of the other players. As great as Cole Palmer is, as great as Phil Foden is, he does that other side of the game so well. And he's always first in all the numbers, the out of possession metrics, So I think that's another thing that sets him apart from some of these other good players, great players. I mean, whether he's world class now, is that a debate we could finish on? Is he yet at that world class level for you guys?
Great question. That's a great question, Graham. I would have said a lot of last season, the season before that I felt he was just a touch below that. But now I'm very happy to, with chest, say that I think he's world class, because it's another season where he's delivering. It's another season where he's putting up sort of, not record breaking numbers, but those little records that come through, like first player since blah, blah, to assist in the first 5 games. There's always kind of little things like that, and he's doing it in the Champions League, which everyone said he had to do. And he's still doing it in big games. His Arsenal team are getting better. And at no point does it look like we're getting better beyond him, like we might have done other players. He is always there at the level with every improvement. I think, if I'm being totally honest, I don't know how much Arsenal fans are going to love this. I still think when Salah is firing, that's the best right winger in the world. But Salah can be hit and miss. Whereas for the last few years, there's times where you're like, was Mo Salah? But then his numbers are incredible. I think Saka hits a slightly more consistent level. But when Salah's on it, I think I just think he's unbelievable. But the fact that we're even putting Saka in a conversation with a Premier League legend, I think tells us how good he is. So yeah, I think he's world class. Anyone disagree? I think he's not.
I do not disagree in the slightest. I think there is, or there should be, zero debate that he is world class. And I think we're doing this as well when the roaring debate at the moment is your Palmers and your Fodens. And when you look as well at the level of freedom and responsibility those two are given in terms of certainly Cole Palmer running a team's attack. And you feel that Saka sometimes can be, if he's ever given the keys to that Arsenal, especially that Arsenal right hand side, then you don't just have this you touchline winger, you have a playmaker from wide and from central. Suddenly, the whole of the pitch is opened up to him, and I think the exciting thing is there are genuine levels to Bukayo Saka that most people that don't watch him every week aren't familiar with, because they don't know he has it within him to run attacks from the middle of the pitch as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's another sort of bag that he can tap into.
Yeah.
That is great down the line, and he's producing what he is on the touchline right now. And I think it's like people look for the eye-catching sort of dribbling past your man, which he, always seems to do now. You come up against a fullback where you say, oh, maybe physically, athletically, this is a good match for Saka, like Nuno Mendes, but he always seems to get one past them. But even if he doesn't, there's a level of subtlety to his game now that it's not about being just a 1v1 specialist. He's complete from wide, from this localized zone. And I think people need to, when they consider Bukayo Saka, there's such a more incomprehensible package that comes with him, like we've touched with the out of possession work too, and even more levels that he can get to, that he's nowhere near his ceiling right now.
Yeah, more to come. Shiroi, world class?
Look, I'm going to do the classic annoying lawyer thing. It depends on your definition of world class, man. I mean, if a lot of people from sort of my generation will come back and say, well, world class, mate, you need to be the guy to guide your team to the majors if you want to be in that bracket. World class, you need to be the guy that's putting up those most Salah numbers if you want to be in that bracket. But there's part of me that sits there and thinks, well, okay, but Harry Kane didn't win any trophies at Tottenham. I still described him as a world-class striker at the time, right? And his numbers.
Not just with Tottenham.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think at the time of recording, I think they're losing, by the way, to Villa, but I haven't double checked. How many are there in the world that are better than him at what he does, or can even do what he does? I really can't think of that many, and that's why I would like to say that he's world class, but I can't say it with as much chest as I absolutely will be if he's one of the people to get us over the line. At that point, I'll get the t-shirt printed.
Graham, you get the final word. You asked the question: world class, yes or no?
I think I agree with Harvey. I think he is now world class, and I see what Shiroi's saying. That is a very good point. That basically you have to win things to be. And you could argue that's the one thing that's missing at the moment. I know he's won a part of the FA Cup squad that won under Arteta, but he hasn't yet got over the line for those big trophies. But I think they're going to come. I think he's world class in his position, definitely. And you made a good point about Salah. I think Salah now is not the Salah of a few years ago. He's still capable of it, of course, as you rightly say. But I watch him now really closely. When I go to watch Arsenal, I sit sort of halfway line, middle tier. So when he's on that right-hand side, he's below me. I watch everything he does. And I see a player that I don't see anybody as good as him. And that's we always talk about eye test, don't we? And then the stats. The eye test tells me he's world class. His movement, his quality, his technique, the way he appreciates space, the way he uses his players, the way he combines, and he's got that ability to glide past players. I just don't see that in a lot of players. And I know I don't watch a lot of world football. I'm trying to think in his position around the world. I mean, people tell me that Real Madrid win. Is it Rodrigo?
You got Rodrigo, Yamal. I mean, there are.
Yeah. But I haven't seen enough of him, but I just can't imagine he's got what Bukayo's got. For me, he's world class, James. So I think we should end there. I think we've all more or less allude to the fact that we believe he's world class now, and I think he will be remembered. I'm pretty sure he will achieve a lot in the game that will add that final part of the argument that Shiroi wants to actually be world class. The other thing is, obviously, he's still very young, isn't he? He got in the England team really young, and he's been like not carrying the England team, but he's been like their man of the match, their go-to player for a number of years.
2-time player of the year for England. 3 tournaments already. Really impressive.
World class for me, mate, honestly.
Fair enough. Well, a great question you asked that sparked a good conversation. We're going to end it there. Everyone, a big thank you, round of applause for Harvey Gratian and Graham Brooks, who just some fantastic insight. Everyone, go and subscribe to the Harvey Gratian YouTube channel, doing fantastic analysis on Arsenal. Graham as well, joining me on Tactical Insight as well. We're doing some fantastic. Well, you're doing some fantastic analysis. I'm there to help facilitate it. But no, it's absolute pleasure, Harvey. Thank you for joining us, mate.
Thank you so much. I've absolutely loved it and hope to do it again very soon.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And Graham, a big thank you to you as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I would say to your viewers, and not only subscribe to your channel, James, but subscribe to Harvey's channel, because I think that the work he does is absolutely outstanding. It's the best I've
Thank
seen.
you very much.
And I've only just literally got hold of his channel, so I've subscribed, and I'll be following him as well. And I think he's really top quality at what he does. So subscribe to Harvey's channel. And if he's looking for any legal work, I'm sure Sir Roy will be in the picture there if he needs any legal representation.
Yeah.
You've worded it brilliantly, Graham. Sharoy, one where me and you, I think, have done a lot of learning, but I've really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, I was just about to say I'd learned a lot there. And there were times where I sat there and I thought, bloody hell, I mean, the level of intelligence just from this handful of podcasters, God only knows what Arteta's instructing people to do on that pitch, and how these players are processing it in that emotive environment. It's nuts. It's nuts. That
I always think
really
that. Not to drag the outro out, but like the amount that you guys know, the amount we talk about it, yeah, in the nicest way, we know probably at best 5% of what Arteta's saying. So what on earth is he saying?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
What is going on every day?
And he's saying it in 23 different languages throughout. It's nuts. It's absolutely
phenomenal. Everyone go subscribe to Sharoy's Voice. More to come, as well as the One Mic podcast every single week with Sharoy giving his views on all things Arsenal. But yeah, more to come. I'm excited to see all. Sharoy, you've been fantastic as always. Thanks, man.
And subscribe to James's channel, the Goonerverse, please. This guy is putting in incredible work.
Wait, is that so? Now the thumbs up doesn't want to happen.
There you go.
There we go.
There.
Well done, MacBook. You figured it out. Yeah, I will tell you all to subscribe. I think that's in the end card outro anyway, so we'll leave it there. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for episode 13 already. 13 episodes of the Goonerverse podcast. We'll be back next week for episode 14, looking for something to talk about in the international break. I'm joking. It will be good as always. Everyone, see you soon.